The sun hung low over the wild fields of the American West, casting a blood-orange glow across the endless grasslands that Jake and Maya called home. For years, the two lions had roamed these vast plains, their powerful forms moving as one, hunting antelope and bison with a rhythm born of instinct and trust. Jake, with his thick, tawny mane and amber eyes that gleamed like polished stones, led their small pride with quiet strength. Maya, lithe and fierce, her golden fur shimmering under the sun, matched his pace with a grace that belied her ferocity. Together, they were unstoppable, their bond forged through countless hunts and silent nights under starlit skies. But the land they loved was changing. Climate change had crept into their world like a thief, stealing the rivers that once sparkled and scattering the herds that sustained them. The grasses, once lush and green, now crackled underfoot, brittle and yellow, as drought tightened its grip. Prey grew scarce, and the air carried a new weight of dry, relentless heat that sapped even the strongest spirits. Jake and Tamaya felt it in their bones, the hunger gnawing deeper each day, the parched earth offering no mercy. One evening, as the horizon burned red, Jake stood atop a low rise, his mane rippling in the hot wind. Maya joined him, her eyes scanning the barren expanse. No antelope grazed in the distance. No rabbits darted through the brush. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint rustle of dead grass. They exchanged a glance, a wordless agreement that their home could no longer sustain them. To survive, they would have to leave. The decision to abandon their territory was not made lightly. These plains held their history, every chase, every triumph, every quiet moment when Maya rested her head against Jake's flank, her breath warm against his fur. But survival demanded sacrifice, and so they set out, their paws stirring dust as they began a journey into the unknown. The first days were grueling. The sun beat down without relent, and the ground, cracked like old leather, offered no respite. They crossed dry riverbeds where water had once flowed, now reduced to shallow trenches of baked mud. Jake led the way, his broad shoulders cutting through the heat haze, while Maya followed, her steps steady despite the hunger that clawed at her insides. They scavenged what they could, small rodents, a half-eaten carcass left by vultures, but it was never enough. At night, they collapsed together, their bodies pressed close for warmth as the desert chill replaced the day's heat. Jake's low growls kept predators at bay, though his own strength waned with each passing day. Maya, ever resilient, licked his muzzle in quiet reassurance, her eyes reflecting the stars above. They were a team, bound by a love that no hardship could break. Weeks into their journey, the landscape grew even harsher. They entered a scorched, fire-ravaged region where a wildfire had recently torn through, leaving behind a wasteland of blackened stumps and ash. The ground smoldered, the air thick with smoke that stung their lungs and blurred their vision. Each step was a gamble, the earth hiding pockets of heat that could sear flesh. Maya, her focus dulled by exhaustion, misstepped. Her paw landed on a smoldering ember, and a sharp yelp broke the silence. She stumbled, her body tensing as pain shot through her. Jake was at her side in an instant, his nose nudging her flank, urging her to lie down. The burn was not deep, but it was enough to make her limp, her right forepaw tender and raw. Jake's eyes, usually fierce, softened with worry. He sniffed the wound, then began to dig into the earth nearby, his powerful claws tearing through the ash until he found a small puddle of water trapped beneath the surface. He lapped at it, then gently nudged Maya's paw toward the cool liquid. She hesitated, her pride warring with her pain, but Jake's insistent nudging won. She dipped her paw into the water, a soft sigh escaping her as the sting eased. Jake stood over her, his body a shield against the world, his gaze never leaving her form. That night, as Maya rested, Jake stood guard. The smoke hung heavy, and the distant howls of coyotes echoed through the darkness. His stomach growled, but he ignored it, his focus solely on Maya. She slept fitfully, her injured paw curled protectively against her body. Jake's heart ached at the sight his fierce partner, brought low by a single misstep. He lowered his head, his mane brushing against her side, and let out a soft rumble. a promise that he would see her through this. The journey had tested them before, but this moment felt different. It was a reminder of their vulnerability, of the fragility of the life they were fighting to preserve. Yet it also deepened their bond. Jake's sacrifice, his hunger, his exhaustion, his unwavering vigilance spoke of a devotion that went beyond survival. It was love, raw and unspoken, carved into every action he took to keep Maya safe. By morning, Maya's strength had returned enough to continue, though her limp persisted. Jake slowed his pace, matching her stride, his body brushing against hers as if to lend her his strength. The scorched land stretched on, but faint signs of life began to appear: a patch of green grass, the distant call of a bird. Hope flickered in their hearts, a fragile flame they nurtured with every step. They didn't know where they were going, only that they had to keep moving. The memory of their old territory lingered, a bittersweet ache, but the promise of a new home drove them forward. Jake glanced at Maya, her eyes bright despite the pain, and felt a surge of pride. She was his equal, his partner, his reason to fight. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead, their bond a beacon in the wilderness. As the sun climbed higher, painting the sky with streaks of gold, they pressed on, two lions against a world that seemed determined to break them. But they were not broken. Not yet. The scorched earth gave way to rolling hills, where patches of green clung stubbornly to life. Jake and Maya had been traveling for weeks, their bodies leaner, their steps heavier, but their resolve unbroken. The faint scent of fresh water hung in the air, a tantalizing promise that pulled them onward. As they crested a ridge, the landscape opened into a vast expanse of grasslands, rivers glinting like silver threads under the midday sun. Yellowstone National Park lay before them, a sanctuary of wild beauty, its ecosystems teeming with life. Jake paused, his mane catching the breeze, and let out a low rumble. Maya, her injured paw still tender but healing, pressed against him, her eyes wide with cautious wonder. This was not their home, not yet, but it felt like a place where they could breathe again. The air was clean, free of the smoke that had choked their lungs, and the distant bleats of elk stirred their hunger. But the park was unfamiliar. Its boundaries marked by strange human constructs, fences glinting in the sun, the hum of patrol vehicles, and the faint scent of metal and oil. Jake's ears twitched, his instincts torn between curiosity and wariness. Maya, too, seemed uneasy, her tail flicking as she scanned the horizon. They had survived the wilderness, but this new world held mysteries they couldn't yet comprehend. Their first steps into Yellowstone were cautious. Jake led, his powerful frame moving with deliberate grace, while Maya followed, her limp less pronounced but still evident. They skirted the edges of the grasslands, keeping to the shadows of pine groves to avoid detection. The park was alive with sounds: birdsong, the rustle of deer, the distant howl of a wolf, but it was the human presence that unsettled them. A patrol vehicle rumbled past, its tires crunching on gravel, and Jake froze, his body low to the ground. Maya crouched beside him, her eyes locked on the strange beast of metal. The vehicle passed without incident, but the encounter left them wary. They needed to find a place to rest, to hunt, to make this land their own, near a Lioness shallow river. They found a secluded clearing surrounded by willows. The water was cool and clear, and Jake lapped at it eagerly, urging Maya to drink. She hesitated, her gaze darting to the shadows, but the water soothed her parched throat and eased the ache in her paw. That night, Jake roared, a deep, resonant sound that echoed across the valley, staking their claim. The sound carried a message: this was their territory now, and they would defend it. At the park's central ranger station, Tom, a grizzled patrol driver with 20 years of experience, sipped coffee as he reviewed the day's reports. His weathered face, etched with lines from years under the sun, broke into a frown when he read about large paw prints found near the river. Lions weren't common in Yellowstone. The park's predators were mostly bears, wolves, and the occasional cougar. Curious, he called Sarah, a wildlife observer known for her meticulous notes and sharp instincts. Sarah, younger but no less dedicated, arrived with her binoculars slung around her neck. Together, They drove to the river, following the tracks. The prints were unmistakable lion in two sets, one slightly smaller. Strangers, Sarah murmured, crouching to examine the marks. The larger set was deep and steady, the smaller one uneven, as if the lion was favoring a paw. Tom nodded, his eyes scanning the willows. "They're not from here," he said. "Must have come a long way." Intrigued, they decided to monitor the lions from a distance, using trail cameras and quiet patrols to avoid disturbing them. Sarah's notebook filled with observations: the male's protective stance, the female's cautious movements, the way they hunted together with a precision that spoke of years as partners. Jake and Maya adapted quickly to their new home. The park's abundance of prey antelope, hares, even the occasional weekend elk eased their hunger. Jake's roars became a nightly ritual, a declaration of their presence that sent smaller predators scurrying. Maya, though still adjusting, grew restless, pacing the clearing as if searching for something lost. Sarah noticed this during one of her observations, her binoculars trained on Maya's sleek form. "She's uneasy," Sarah told Tom, her voice tinged with concern. "Maybe it's the injury, or maybe it's something else." Tom, leaning against their jeep, scratched his beard. "Could be she's carrying a cub," he suggested. Sarah's eyes lit up at the possibility. A cub would be a rare gift for the park, a sign of hope for a species struggling against a changing world. They began to track Maya's behavior more closely, noting how Jake stayed near her, his body a constant shield. One evening, as they watched from a hill, Jake brought down a young antelope and dragged it to Maya, dropping it at her feet. She ate first, a gesture that struck Sarah as deeply tender. "He's looking out for her," she whispered, her pen scratching furiously in her notebook. Tom nodded, his usual gruff demeanor softening. "They've been through hell to get here," he said. "Let's make sure they stay safe." As weeks passed, Maya's belly began to swell, confirming Sarah's suspicions. The signs were subtle at first: a slight roundness, a heavier gait but undeniable. Jake's protectiveness grew fiercer. He patrolled their clearing with a vigilance that left no room for error. Sarah and Tom prepared for the possibility of a birth, gathering medical supplies and consulting with veterinarians. The park staff buzzed with quiet excitement, the prospect of a new lion cub lifting their spirits. But beneath the hope lay worry. Maya's injury, though healing, had weakened her, and the journey had taken its toll. Sarah spent hours studying her notes, analyzing Maya's diet and movements, determined to ensure a healthy birth. Tom, ever practical, checked their equipment, his hands steady despite the weight of responsibility. They both knew the risks: wild births were unpredictable, and human intervention could provoke Jake's wrath. Yet they couldn't stand by and do nothing. As the days grew shorter and the air carried the first hints of autumn, Jake and Maya settled into their new life, unaware of the humans watching over them. The park, with its rivers and grasslands, felt like a second chance, a place where they could rebuild what the dying plains had taken. But the future was uncertain, and the shadow of Maya's coming labor loomed large, a test that would demand every ounce of their strength and the humans' courage. The autumn air in Yellowstone carried a crisp edge, the grasslands tinged with gold as the days grew shorter. Jake and Maya had claimed their clearing by the river as their own, the willows offering a fragile shield from the world beyond. Maya's pregnancy was now unmistakable, her belly heavy and her movements slow, each step a careful negotiation with the earth. Her injured paw had healed enough to bear her weight, but the journey's toll lingered in her weary eyes. Jake, ever vigilant, rarely strayed far, his amber gaze scanning the horizon for threats. His roars, once a bold declaration of territory, had softened into a low, steady rumble, as if he sensed the delicate balance of their new life. The park's abundance had restored some of their strength. Hares and antelope were plentiful, and the river's cool waters soothed their thirst, but Maya's condition demanded more than survival. She needed rest, safety, and time, luxuries the wild rarely offered. Jake seemed to understand this instinctively, his every action a testament to their bond. He hunted alone now, dragging kills back to the clearing for Maya, who ate with a quiet gratitude that spoke of trust deeper than words. Each night, he stood guard, his silhouette a dark sentinel against the starlit sky, while Maya curled up in the grass, her breathing heavy but steady. At the ranger station, Sarah pored over her notes, her desk cluttered with maps and photos from trail cameras. Maya's pregnancy fascinated her, not just as a scientist, but as someone who saw in the lions a reflection of resilience. She'd spent years studying Yellowstone's wildlife, but Jake and Maya were different their journey. Their scars, their unspoken devotion stirred something in her. She tracked Maya's behavior obsessively, noting her reduced activity in the way Jake hovered closer each day. "She's close," Sarah told Tom during a morning briefing, her voice a mix of excitement and nerves. Tom, leaning back in his chair, nodded slowly. His years in the park had taught him to temper hope with caution. "We need to be ready," he said, his fingers tapping the medical kit on the table. They'd prepared for every scenario: malnutrition, infection, a difficult birth, but the unpredictability of wild animals kept them on edge. Sarah suggested setting up a closer observation post. A risky move given Jake's protective nature, but Tom agreed. They chose a spot on a low hill overlooking the clearing, hidden by pines, where they could watch without disturbing the lions. Armed with binoculars, a tranquilizer gun, and a first aid kit modified for veterinary use, they settled in, their breath visible in the cool morning air. Days passed, and Maya's labor began under a gray dawn. The clearing was quiet, save for the soft rush of the river and Maya's low moans. She paced in tight circles, her body tensing with each contraction, while Jake watched, his tail twitching with agitation. Sarah and Tom, hidden on the hill, felt their hearts race. Sarah's binoculars trembled in her hands as she whispered, "She's struggling." The labor stretched into hours, Maya's moans growing sharper, her movements frantic. Jake paced now too, his massive paws silent on the grass, his eyes darting between Maya and the surrounding trees. Sarah's notes confirmed her fear prolonged labor could exhaust Maya, risking her life in the cubs. Tom's jaw tightened as he checked the tranquilizer gun, though both knew using it was a last resort. Jake's protectiveness could turn deadly if they misjudged his reaction. But doing nothing wasn't an option either. Sarah's mind raced, recalling a case where a lioness in a similar situation had been saved with a birth aid injection, a mild stimulant to strengthen contractions. It was a gamble, but Maya's weakening moans left them little choice. "We have to try," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. Tom nodded, his hands already moving to prepare the syringe. They approached the clearing with agonizing care, moving downwind to mask their scent. Jake sensed them first, his head snapping up, his mane bristling as a low growl rumbled from his chest. Sarah froze, her eyes locked on his, and began to speak softly, her voice a soothing hum. "Easy, Jake," she murmured, using the name she'd given him in her notes. "We're here to help her." Jake's growl didn't escalate, his eyes narrowing as if weighing her intent. Maya, lost in her pain, barely noticed, her body writhing in the grass. Tom moved closer, his movements slow and deliberate, the syringe hidden in his palm. Jake took a step forward, his muscles tensing. But Sarah kept talking, her voice a lifeline in the tense air. "You know we're not a threat," she said, her words more for herself than the lion. To their astonishment, Jake held his ground, his growl softening into a wary huff. Tom knelt beside Maya, his hand steady as he administered the injection into her flank. She flinched but didn't lash out, her energy sapped by the ordeal. Jake watched, his body rigid, but he didn't charge. Sarah's heart pounded as she realized he was trusting them, or at least tolerating their presence for Maya's sake. The injection worked slowly, Maya's contractions growing stronger. After 2 grueling hours, a small, wet cub slid into the grass, its tiny body glistening under the weak sunlight. Maya's moans softened as she turned to her cub, her tongue gently cleaning its fur. Jake approached, his massive form looming over the newborn, and licked it with a tenderness that made Sarah's breath catch. They named the cub Leo, meaning new beginning, a name that felt like a prayer. Sarah checked Maya's vitals from a safe distance, administering a tonic to aid her recovery, while Tom watched Jake, ready to retreat if needed. But Jake's focus was on his family, his eyes soft as he nuzzled Maya. The human stepped back, their job done, their hearts full, as they retreated to their observation post. Sarah whispered, "We did it," Tom, usually stoic, managed a small smile. "They did it," he corrected, nodding toward the lions. The clearing was peaceful now, the cubs' faint mews mingling with the river's song. Jake lay beside Maya, his body a shield, while Leo nestled against her, a fragile spark of life in the wild heart of Yellowstone. The clearing by the river had become a sanctuary for Jake, Maya, and their newborn cub, Leo. The autumn days in Yellowstone were vibrant, the grasslands alive with the rustle of elk and the distant calls of wolves. But the lion family carved out their own quiet world. Maya, though still weak from her grueling labor, had regained enough strength to nurse Leo, her eyes glowing with a fierce, protective love as she licked his tiny form. Jake's presence was a constant reassurance, his massive frame a barrier between his family and the dangers of the wild. He hunted with renewed purpose, dragging back hares and small antelope to ensure Maya could eat without leaving Leo's side. The cub, though small, was growing stronger, his clumsy paws testing the grass as he toddled under Maya's watchful gaze. At night, the family slept close, Jake's low rumbles a lullaby that soothed Leo's soft whimpers. The bond between them was palpable, a fragile yet unbreakable thread woven through their shared survival. But the peace of their new home was deceptive. For Yellowstone, with all its beauty, was not without its threats. Beyond the clearing, the park pulsed with life, and not all of it was friendly. Tom and Sarah continued their vigilant watch from the hill, their observation post now a second home. Sarah's notebook was filled with sketches of Leo, his wobbly steps, his playful nips at Maya's tail, each entry a testament to the miracle they had helped bring into the world. Tom, ever practical, maintained their equipment, ensuring their Jeep was ready for quick interventions and their medical kits stocked. The park staff had rallied around the lion family, their excitement tempered by the knowledge that a cub's survival was never guaranteed. Sarah's observations grew more detailed, noting Jake's increased patrols and Maya's cautious movements. "They're settling in," she told Tom during a quiet patrol, her voice tinged with hope. But Tom's eyes were on the horizon, where a faint plume of dust rose from the park's edge. "Something's stirring out there," he muttered, his instincts honed by years in the wild. He'd heard reports of mining activity near the park's boundaries, a distant rumble that unsettled the animals. Sarah frowned, her mind racing. Disturbances like that could drive larger animals into the park, disrupting the delicate balance of its ecosystems. The threat materialized one crisp morning when a herd of wild elephants wandered into Jake's territory, driven from their usual paths by the noise and destruction of mining equipment. The elephants were restless, their massive forms casting long shadows across the grasslands. Jake sensed them first, his ears twitching as the ground trembled under their weight. He rose from the clearing, his mane bristling, and let out a warning roar that echoed through the valley. Maya, alerted by the sound, clutched Leo closer, her body tense as she prepared to flee. The cub, unaware of the danger, mewed softly, his tiny paws pressing against her side. A young elephant, curious and bold, broke from the herd, its trunk swinging as it lumbered toward the clearing. Jake's roar grew fiercer, his body low and ready to charge. The young elephant hesitated, but its mother, a towering matriarch with scarred ears, trumpeted in response, her protective instincts flaring. The situation teetered on the edge of violence, the air thick with tension as Jake stood his ground, his eyes locked on the approaching giant. Maya, still weakened, gathered her strength, ready to carry Leo to safety if needed. Tom and Sarah, patrolling nearby, spotted the dust cloud and heard Jake's roars. They raced to the scene, their Jeep bouncing over the uneven terrain. Sarah's heart sank as she saw the elephants, their massive forms dwarfing the lions. "We can't let this escalate," she said, her voice tight. Tom nodded, already reaching for the speaker system they used to manage wildlife encounters. The device emitted low-frequency sounds designed to calm large animals, a technique they'd used with bears and bison. As they neared the clearing, Sarah caught sight of Jake, his muscles coiled, and Maya, her eyes wide with fear as she shielded Leo. The young elephant was only meters away now, its mother closing in, her trunk raised in warning. Tom activated the speaker, the soothing hum cutting through the chaos. The elephants paused, their ears flapping as they processed the unfamiliar sound. Sarah held her breath, her hands gripping the Jeep's dashboard. The matriarch trumpeted once more, but the aggression in her call softened, and she began to turn, guiding her calf back toward the herd. The other elephants followed, their heavy steps fading into the distance. Jake remained tense, his growl lingering until the last elephant vanished from sight. Only then did he return to Maya, nuzzling her gently as she relaxed her grip on Leo. The cub, unharmed, let out a small mew, oblivious to the danger that had passed. Sarah exhaled, her shoulders sagging with relief. That was too close. She whispered, "Tom." His eyes still on the clearing, nodded. "They trust us now," he said, his voice low. Jake didn't turn on us, even with the elephants so close. The encounter had shifted something in the lion's perception of the humans. Jake's lack of aggression toward Tom and Sarah, even in the height of danger, suggested a fragile trust, born from their help during Leo's birth, as the Jeep pulled away. Sarah glanced back at the clearing, where Jake stood watch over his family, his silhouette framed against the golden grass. The moment felt like a pact, a silent agreement between humans and lions to protect the life they'd fought so hard to preserve. To deepen the story, the encounter with the elephants revealed more than just a physical threat. It stirred memories in Sarah of her own childhood, when she'd watched her father, a park ranger, navigate similar crises. His calm under pressure had inspired her career, but it also reminded her of the fragility of life in the wild, a lesson Jake and Maya embodied. For Tom, the incident brought back a long-buried memory of a time he'd failed to save a young bear cub from a predator, a regret that drove his relentless dedication now. These reflections added weight to their resolve, making their efforts to protect the lion family not just a job, but a personal mission to honor the resilience of life itself. The elephant's retreat, guided by the human's intervention, underscored the delicate balance between man and nature, a harmony that Jake and Maya's survival depended on. 3 years had passed since Leo's birth, and the Yellowstone clearing by the river had transformed into a true home for the lion family. The grasslands, once unfamiliar, now bore the marks of their presence-worn paths where Jake patrolled, patches of flattened grass where Maya taught Leo to stalk, and the faint scratches on willow trunks where the cub, now a strong young lion, had sharpened his claws. Jake, his mane grayer but still commanding, carried the weight of his years with a quiet dignity. His amber eyes, though softer now, held the same fierce protectiveness that had guided them through the dying plains. Maya, her golden fur streaked with faint scars from their journey, moved with a steady grace, her limp a distant memory. Leo, nearly as large as his father, was a vision of youthful strength, his mane just beginning to thicken, his playful bounds giving way to the confident strides of a lion coming into his own. The family hunted together now, their movements a seamless dance of instinct and trust. Under the vast Yellowstone sky, they were a testament to survival, their bond a living monument to the trials they'd overcome. The park itself seemed to embrace them, its rivers and grasslands offering a fragile peace that felt like a reward for their resilience. Tom and Sarah, now seasoned guardians of the lion family, had made the clearing a regular stop on their patrols. Sarah's notebook was a chronicle of their lives, Leo's first successful hunt, Maya's patient lessons, Jake's unwavering vigilance. Each entry was a love letter to the wild, a record of a family that had defied the odds. Tom, whose gruff exterior had softened over the years, carried a quiet pride in their role. The lion family's survival was a career highlight, a story he told new rangers with a rare warmth in his voice. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and pink, they set out on a sunset patrol. The air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and earth, and the grasslands glowed under the fading light. As their jeep approached the clearing, they spotted the lion family on a grassy slope. Leo was practicing his stalking, crouching low as he trailed Maya, who feigned ignorance, her tail flicking playfully. Jake rested on a rise, his eyes half closed but alert, his silhouette a kingly figure against the sunset. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling at the sight. "They've made it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Then, something unexpected happened. Leo, catching sight of the jeep, broke from his play and stepped forward. His young mane ruffled in the breeze as he stopped a few meters away. His eyes locked on Tom and Sarah. He let out a low, rumbling growl, not aggressive, but curious, almost like a greeting. Tom, usually reserved, froze, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. "He knows us," he murmured, his voice barely audible. Sarah's eyes welled up, the weight of their shared history hitting her. She remembered the night of Leo's birth, the fear in Maya's moans, the trust in Jake's steady gaze. That moment had forged a bond, fragile but real, between humans and lions. Leo's growl felt like an acknowledgement, a recognition of the hands that had helped bring him into the world. Jake and Maya watched from the slope, their postures relaxed, no longer bristling at the jeep's presence. Jake's silence spoke volumes. He trusted them, a trust earned through years of quiet protection. Sarah reached for her notebook, but instead of writing, she simply watched, committing the moment to memory. As the family gathered on the slope, Jake rose, his massive form casting a long shadow. He let out a resonant roar, deep and powerful, that rolled across the valley like thunder. It wasn't a warning or a claim, but something else, a declaration of presence, of gratitude, of life. Maya joined him, her softer roar blending with his, while Leo added a youthful, eager call. The sound carried on the wind, mingling with the rustle of grass and the distant rush of the river. Tom and Sarah sat in silence, the weight of the moment settling over them. Tom reached into the jeep and pulled out a small wooden plaque they'd prepared, inscribed with Leo's family, where life began. It was a simple gesture, a token of their bond with the lions. He placed it gently at the edge of the clearing, hidden in the grass, a quiet offering to the family they'd come to love. As they drove away, Sarah glanced back, catching Leo's gaze. His eyes, so like Jake's, held a spark of curiosity, as if memorizing the humans who had given him a chance at life. The starry sky above Yellowstone glowed that night, one particularly bright star twinkling as if nature itself was watching. The lion family walked together, Leo bounding between Jake and Maya, his energy a spark of hope in the twilight. The grasslands stretched endless before them, a canvas of life painted with struggle and triumph. Sarah, back at the ranger station, added a final entry to her notebook. "Every life saved is a promise for the future." The words felt like a vow, a commitment to the wild that had shaped her and Tom's lives as much as they had shaped the lions. The story of Jake, Maya, and Leo spread through the park, a tale of resilience that inspired rangers and visitors alike. It was a reminder that in the heart of the wild, where survival hung by a thread, love and trust could forge a legacy that endured. As the jeep's taillights faded into the night, the lion family settled under the stars, their silhouettes a quiet testament to the power of life to persevere, to thrive, to begin again, to deepen the story's emotional resonance. The moment of Leo's greeting carried an added layer of meaning for Sarah. It reminded her of her father's stories of connecting with the wild, moments when animals seemed to see beyond the divide between species. For Tom, it stirred a memory of his late wife, who had loved Yellowstone and believed in the quiet magic of its creatures. Her loss had driven him to the park, and now, watching Leo, he felt her presence, as if she were smiling at the life they'd helped save. These reflections added depth to their bond with the lions, making the plaque not just a gift, but a symbol of their own healing, a bridge between human and animal forged through shared hope. The story closed under the starry sky, the bright star a nod to the unseen forces nature, love, resilience that had guided them all to this moment.